Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Chris Hallberg. Chris Hallberg refers to himself as the business sergeant because he is both former Army and law enforcement. He has founded multiple companies and is an expert EOS implementer. Through all of his companies, he works with clients to improve their results through employing better systems. And we're going to apply that to our communication approaches in our conversation with him today. Among the many cool topics we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about the power and risks of expectations, how to apply systems thinking in our businesses and our communications. He's going to talk through his rule of 7, among many, many other interesting approaches and perspectives. Thank you all very much for being here for another conversation. We truly appreciate it. While you're here, we'd be grateful if you took a second to like the show, share the show with your network, subscribe to the show, and please, we keep asking, leave us more of your feedback. We would love to continue to hear from you. Thank you. And while you're online today, take a quick minute to check out our sponsors. You can go over to humantel.com and enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off. The best-in-class, science-backed training to recognize when people's emotions are shifting by identifying changes in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. Everything you need to know to choose the best program for you, which I highly recommend, is all over at humantel.com. For the professional interviewers in the room, please head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you can get all your questions answered, learn everything you need to know about both the International Association of Interviewers and the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. Everything you need to know is there at certifiedinterviewer.com. And while you're online today, please check out inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and more to teach them how to apply the strategic observation and persuasive communication techniques necessary to provoke the productive answers that help us solve problems and forge relationships faster. We really appreciate you being here for another episode. Thank you so very much. Without further ado, I introduce to you Chris Hallberg. Chris, it is a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome, Michael. Thanks for having me on your program. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Digging into your background and getting ready for this conversation, there were no shortage of routes that we could take and paths that we could dive into. And like I said, I'm really excited to dive into it. And one of the areas that caught my attention when I was reading some of the things that you've written online to get ready was how you focus on the importance of leaders not avoiding the hard conversations. Right? It goes without saying that most of us you and I have hard conversations for a living. If I could go a day without having one, that would be cool. Like, I'm not going to lie and say I really look forward to it every day. It's just what we do. So in your expertise and experience working with executives, what do you see as some of the biggest risks that we encounter if we avoid the hard conversations?
Yeah, great question. Mountains instead of molehills. If I had $1 for every time I facilitated a difficult conversation, and then 10 minutes later hearing, wow, that wasn't that hard, it's about 89.5% of the times someone's like, I can't do it. And then facilitate a very brief conversation. Why don't I just model that for your audience? What I would say if someone said, wow, like this is a really hard for me. I'd be like, well, okay, let's talk about how hard it is for everyone else because you're failing to have the conversation. And if you identify as a leader, what is the difference between a leader and a follower? Right? The leaders care for the followers. The followers look for the leaders for direction. And having hard conversations is day one stuff to be a leader. So when I find leaders that are not having a difficult conversation, I'll facilitate all of the things that are broken and why a conversation would be initiated originally. And then I'll kind of weigh and measure the amount of pain the rest of the organization is going through because this is an unresolved issue. And in a very quick period of time with a marker and a dry erase board, I can have basically 30 people or customers or the bottom line or your banker or all these other people feeling a pain because you've created this artificial roadblock in your head that this is going to be the most brutal, bad conversation and I'm going to run from it versus I've now weighed and measured the actual pain, and this conversation to this one person is 2 units of pain. This is 47 units of pain. So if we want to sign up for another 47 units of pain for the next couple of quarters, now we're into the hundreds of units of pain. So like, I'm not an investing wizard here, but I like the ROI on the like effort versus pain and suffering, brain damage index, whatever we want to call that today. And it's a matter of understanding when I frame it to like, if you don't say something, who else will? And I'm talking to the CEO at this point, like you're not requiring the difficult conversation. So this is where I get into like an operating system and why there's a lot of safety in a business operating system, because we create who we are, why we exist, what we do, who we do it with, by how much, by when, 3-year, 1 year, quarterly, and what are our long-term issues, right? So I was talking about an EOS VTO for anybody that knows what that is. For anybody that doesn't, an operating system is something we all take great care and answer these questions. Then everyone opts all the way into that, or they opt all the way out. There's no more, I'm here, I'm kind of here today, I'm here for this, but not for that. Like companies are buses. Like they go on a route. But employees today want to treat it like an Uber. Can you take my grandma's house? Well, if she doesn't live on this route, the answer is no. Right? You need a taxi or an Uber. So the neat thing about a company is your vision should be exciting. It should inspire people. We should be helping people. We're not measuring just in profit, but in impact. All the lives that we improve through our goods and services and your sweat and toil. So like when we don't have those conversations, our impact is limited. The amount of people we can help is limited. The amount of employees that we can retain and do this at scale is limited. All because we've somehow convinced ourselves that this conversation is too hot to touch. And my point is, like, how many other painful conversations are you going to ask other people to have because you won't have this one and you are the only person or the right person, and that's what you're here to do. So, like, would you like to turn in your stripes and become an individual contributor, or would you like to do your job? Because the company's been paying you to be the leader. You just haven't been doing it. So you can make this right by making a commitment and asking other people to commit to this special thing. That means something to us. It might not mean anything for everybody else. So if there's one vision and it's all the way in and all the way out, that is the root causation of the difficult conversation. So if you don't have a plan, it's just kind of this amorphous thing that ebbs and flows and we get what we get. You're playing with fire. That's not super scalable. And it allows you to have a bunch of things that you don't want to talk about. And at scale, I don't like your odds there. If we say, like, one of our core values is we're authentic, like, even if it's not popular, but you think it could help the team, just say it. And we could just say, nope, I don't think that's an issue, but thanks for your input. That's way better than saying, oh, I wish I could just say the thing. We're all in the room. Everybody knows what the issue is, but this big megalomaniac, narcissistic egomaniac who's running this meeting, could never make a bad hire or could never make a bad decision, right? These are the people that take all the credit and they're impossible to blame. Those are the people that don't have difficult conversations.
Yeah, some heavy titles in there, but you raised many, many good points. And the role of systems, regardless of what that system is, the role of systems are so important because it's a playbook. It's a standardized rule. Now we can focus on the issue, not the person. It's not you did this right or wrong. This is the system. This is the plan. This is the agreement. So it allows for a degree of hopefully confrontation to be taken out or personalization to be taken out of those conversations, which is helpful. Another cool thing that you did in that example is when they said, I can't have the conversation, and you started flipping it to the bigger picture, the larger outcomes. So often when somebody says, I can't do it, really what they're saying is the amount of either physical, emotional, or cognitive effort I need to put into the thing is not worth the reward I'm getting out of it. So right away, you're reframing the outcomes in order to reset their effort willingness. That's probably not the proper way to say it, but the amount of effort that they're willing to put into it in order to start attacking it. And hearing you say that, I'll keep this bare bones short, but a couple of lifetimes ago, I watched a man in charge of a large group of people decide that several of those people weren't going to work there anymore. 100% his call. He made the decision. And quite frankly, it was probably the right decision. Once he made the decision, he pointed at somebody else and said, you go ahead and tell them I'm going to be in my office, and walked away and shut the door. I was like, man, it was honestly the right decision, but can't really see it being handled or delivered much worse, in this case, non-delivered than it was. You mentioned hard conversations being a day one thing. I think from the outside looking in, hard conversations are a day one expectation of leaders. And correct me on all of this, please, if you see it a different way. Seriously. I would hazard a guess that most leaders get into their role based on, for lack of a better term, their technical expertise, their ability as executioners get them into a role. So they can execute on tasks. But then because they were good at executing on tasks, they get into a leadership role. And then the day one expectation is now you have to go have these difficult conversations. They might not be difficult for somebody like you who's been looking at it this way for a long time, but for them, their stress levels just spiked, blew the lid off their skull. I'm used to doing things, telling people what I want, asking them for what I need, but not coaching and not actually delivering feedback in a way, to use your words, which I 100% am on board with, that delivers impact or creates impact for them. So in your experience, how do you help executioners, tacticians? Executioners sounds like people with a big axe and a stump. How do you help tacticians grow from I'm really great at doing things to developing not just the skill set, but the confidence to facilitate some of these conversations?
Yeah, I think you said it, Michael. It's an agreement, and people just gloss right over that. All right. An expectation, that's a resentment under construction. Think about all the expectations you have of people that haven't been properly communicated. Think of the expectations that are foisted upon you, that people get disappointed with you. Sometimes the people we love the most, we have unrealistic high expectations of, and we don't really have any space or grace or communicate that. So just look at yourself in that. So when I say when we have an agreement, if I just have a blind expectation and you can't meet it, there's some tension in the relationship. You're disappointing me. You know what I mean? And that's not fair to you for me to say, ooh, kind of difficult conversation, but you said you were good at this during the interview phase. Turns out that's not the case, right? And sometimes that's just maybe a breakdown in the hiring process or skills, or could be another process, another workflow, another playbook that you're referring to, systems thinking, operating system, or SOP, or whatever you want to talk about. But let me go to another coach's work, Patrick Lencioni, and talk about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's a triangle. The bottom's trust, being vulnerable, being able just to say, hey, what I just said right there, and with a straight face, like, hey, like I did not expect your performance to be like this after the interview thing when you told me you invented this. Okay, so I just got to trust that we can have this conversation and find out what's going on. And then once we can be vulnerable and we're not BSing each other, and you believe me and I believe you, you're not just like, oh, bless your heart, which in the South is, man, you're dumb, right? Or whatever, like the kind passive aggressive thing you'd get in the Midwest. And then we get into conflict. Once we can be vulnerable, we can speak the truth, then only then can we enter into healthy conflict. F you, no F you, no F you more. Unhealthy conflict, that's not making the workplace better. Like, hey, Michael, I disagree. My memory's kind of good. Last meeting, you said this is exactly what you want to do. We all did our things. And you're here today and you seem to have some selective amnesia. And now we got to wait for you. Like, this is happening. Like, are you okay? You know, like somebody calling you out on it. So you just can't be a flake when everyone else is executing. And when we can have healthy conflict, only then do we get the next one, which is commitment. And when people are actually committed, the one right above it is accountability. So everyone meets me and says, I wish my team was more accountable. Well, I'll say, well, can people speak the truth without being transferred to the Anchorage, Alaska field office for speaking the truth in the quarterly meeting? See where I'm going with this? And then once we can have that true commitment, the accountability comes natural. And once we're all accountable, the results just happen. So it's actually a chain reaction. Lack of trust breeds a fear of healthy conflict, which brings absence of commitment, which brings low or no accountability, which means poor results. So back it up and say, when we have the ability to just trust and be vulnerable, and when we have company core values, we have a company plan. That's what I'm talking about. Those are the agreed upon rules that are safe. Everybody who works here agreed to behave these ways, core values. Everybody at the company agreed to hit these metrics, right? To be green and on track and a good teammate. And when you're having red numbers or behaviors outside of what we agreed upon, you're out of bounds. I'm not out of bounds. My job is to call you out because you agreed to act this way. So really, it sounds very simple, but it's amazing. The very large scale brands, logos you would all recommend or recognize if I said who they were. Everyone has this issue. If you don't go out of your way to document, this is what it looks like, and we're willing to exit you if it doesn't look like that anymore, even if it used to look like that. If it doesn't look like that in 6 months, that's same thing. I'm the CEO. I can't violate these core values. I can't selectively enforce standards. These are the rules for everybody. So it doesn't matter if you're number one or you're the last person on the seniority chart. When we have an environment where the rules are the same and we've all agreed those are the rules, we're not even having difficult conversations. We're just reminding people of the commitments they made, and they are or not meeting them. And I'll also add that the word accountability generally has a negative connotation. People think about holding someone accountable as an icky thing or a bad thing or a difficult conversation, right? Great job, Michael. Really like the way you held firm on that and did the thing. When I give you praise, I'm holding you accountable for a positive result. When I hold you accountable, hey, you can't forget to wear pants at the office, Michael. We have rules here, right? So my point is that's on you because we have a dress code. You're out of bounds. And if I let you walk around, then we're going to have problems in other parts of the company. So that's kind of a crazy example, but not really.
It's laundry day, man. I'm sorry. I'll have pants tomorrow.
They're jorts. They're approved. Yeah.
You raise a lot of good points there. And you talked about it being the same set of rules for everybody. And all too often, I'm sure you run into this more than I do. We find people, when I say at the top of the food chain, that could be for a team, for a department, for a division, for a company, whatever. There's a section of an org chart, there's somebody at the top of it who holds themselves to a different standard, or maybe holds their right-hand man or woman to a different standard than everybody else. And that disconnect right there, if they're not walking the talk, if they're not committed and consistent, then it creates more difficulty down the road. So there's that point that you brought up. One of the other points that you brought up that I think is very important as well is this idea of commitment. And from a leadership standpoint, from a communication standpoint, often when we're communicating, it's easy for us to fall face first into the entitlement trap and assume that because people accept their paychecks and they come to work every day and they got the employee handbook, that they are committed to all of these things that we say we are, whether we've ever had a real conversation about it, whether we've checked it, whether we've lived it, whether we've experienced it, whether we've praised it, held it accountable, so on and so forth. And one of the things that I find funny, and I'm curious how often you see this, is a leader will feel like they've gotten commitment when somebody looks at them and says, fine, I'll do it.
Well, that's almost like someone capitulated or said uncle or tapped out.
You used the perfect word. It's coercion at that point. When I'm saying, fine, I'll do it, what that really means is I'm done listening to this. So I'm going to walk away and figure out what the minimum required standards are. So again, I'm curious in your work, how do you work with leaders to help elevate so we're not just gaining compliance, we're actually, this might be too strong a word, but inspiring commitment?
Well, you gotta show people what the expectation is, and it should be explicit. It should be named, illustrated, and referred to constantly. This should not be a foreign concept. Oh, I wasn't in the meeting, I didn't know that. So that kind of leads me to another thing, like people today, these smartphones are definitely not making us smarter, I assure you. The entitlement, the push button society, the instant gratification, the dopamine hits, like what's happening outside of the office is affecting us inside the office. Let's just be clear. And the amount of young people coming out of high school or college today who are highly accountable, hardworking, ready to have difficult conversations, well, let's just say that number isn't growing. It's been shrinking for the last decade, and it might turn around. It might not. So having these skills is becoming more of a rare thing, which means if your company possesses them, they can be leveraged in a way that they weren't before when it was more common. So this goes back to the mindset of this is how we operate. Your role as a leader starts with leading, managing, hold people accountable for good and bad. And then your next thing is this. So another thing I would say is if you're asking your leaders to also be billable, what are you doing? Like, you see what I'm saying? You manage these people and I need you to bill more than the rest of them because I pay you more. What are you really investing in? Leadership? I would argue, military says rule of 7, any more than 7 direct reports, then you lose the ability to truly understand your people and accelerate their improvement and really be a good leader just by being present. More than 7 places at once is really hard to do. And it's the military. They spent millions of dollars and years to figure this out. So like you can steal this idea and really say, what are the rules? This is how the game is played. And when you have a scorecard of numbers, this is what green looks like. These are our values. And this is the bar. We don't expect perfection, but we expect high compliance. Low compliance would mean you're the wrong person. And if you're good at your job, you'd be the wrong person in the right seat, AKA the brilliant jerk, the super profitable, productive person who walks into the room and all of the fun people scatter because nobody's got time for another baseless HR complaint to work through. So like if we have everyone is in it to win it, is a great teammate, they bleed the company colors, they ride the brand, whatever you want to say, and they're individually great at what they do, that's the right person in the right seat. And if you curate your company to 80, 90% right people, right seats, they'll clear out the remaining people due to peer pressure and just vibes. But once you have 20, 25, 30% of the company either doesn't really want to be there or they're mercenary for another $1 or $2, they'll go somewhere else. Yeah, now we're trying to accommodate a bunch of people doing the minimum amount necessary not to get fired, which basically describes the average American at work. Sorry, but that's the data. So how do you become a top 20% business? Well, you set your expectations in the top 20%, and then you create hiring systems and recruiting systems and referral systems and assessment science, not just the art of hiring, the science of hiring. And if we're only interviewing people that have the correct wiring and belief system as our top third performers, we're going to add more to that. If we just let anyone who's great at interviewing get a shot in a year to do it or not do it, add that up every time that happens. And I assure you that is not world-class execution. So I'm going back to, this is how we roll here. And not everybody can work here, and that's okay. So I want you to be slow to hire, and I want you to be quick to fire, because that is the exact movement on an elite sports team, an elite academic institution, anywhere who is world-class. I live just north of Colorado Springs, south of Denver. Do you think they got a couple of stopwatches at the Olympic Training Center? Right? Like, I bet you the building's full of them, because a tenth of a second is an eon when you're dealing with hundreds or thousands at the Olympic level.
That's a great point, especially with the hiring. People who can talk people who are great talkers. I want to be careful I don't insult anybody accidentally. It's not uncommon for someone to do such a great job talking because they've developed that as a skill to mask the fact that they struggle with execution. So by having a system in process for hiring, asking the right questions, getting the right participation, having them give you the right examples as opposed to just taking their word for it, all of those things make a great difference. And to go back just a little bit, I love how you talked about praising as part of accountability. I don't think I reinforced that one. I don't hear that often. I think that's a great point. So I want to go back and reinforce that, as well as what you talked about, having leaders who are also getting billed. And you've probably seen this in multiple areas. I feel like the place that I see that the most is with sales teams, when the sales leader actually has their own client book. So you got to manage the sales team, coach their performance, but then you got to go sell as well. So, oh, and by the way, you get higher commission for selling. So where am I going to spend the majority of my time? Coaching and developing my people, or actually selling and maintaining my customer base? So a fantastic point that you make. And that's the area that I believe that I've run into it the most often. You talked about the rule of 7 in the military. And I know that you're a veteran. I'm not. I appreciate your service. Thank you very much. I'm curious, what other rules, philosophies, systems have you taken from your military experience and applied into your business leadership work?
Yeah. So the systems thinking would be the first thing, because the military literally has a system, an acronym, a steps to do stuff for everything. And, almost 30 years out of uniform, I can still unjam an M16 because of the sports acronym. I still remember what that is today. So, so the systems thinking and the commitment, and there is a standard. And in the military, there's a task, there's a condition, and then there's a standard. If you don't meet the standard, they'll oftentimes let you take it again, but they won't approve you to move forward until you've satisfied the standard. Where, I talk about speeding tickets or warnings, right? Much nicer to give a kind person with a clean driving record a warning on the side of the road. It has the same effect as a ticket, but gives them credit for not having 18 speeding tickets on their record. However, if you knew you were going to get a warning instead of a ticket, you'd drive 200 miles an hour everywhere you go, and it'd be a NASCAR track instead of the freeway. So what do you do when you're not even speeding? When you see Johnny Law sitting in the median, right? You pump your brakes, which at 75 miles an hour isn't a really great thing to the person that's 40 feet behind you, because at speed, that's better hope they're paying attention. But you do that not because of just the ticket, which is probably $250, $300 now, but it's your insurance going up crazy. It's the points on your license. It's you sitting in driver's ed with 15-year-olds in driver's school. There are a lot of different accountabilities to going too fast. So it's better just to slow down, because all you need is a speeding ticket every 10 to 15 years to remind you that it's probably not worth getting to your location an extra 14 seconds faster while taking all that risk, right? So there's a consequence. So if you cannot do your job publicly in front of the team 14 times in a row, you're just asking the other humans to do that, because that's what humans do. This is okay. Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to do it too. This feels good. Wow, I can't believe I can do this. And then you have kind of a problem. If someone drives a mile over the speed limit, hey, slow it down a little bit. Thank you. When they drive 15 miles over the speed limit, come over here. I'm writing you up. Most of the people I meet with are handing out, they have a stack of warnings, and then there's their ticket pile. It's much smaller. So what changes the behavior? It has to be an effective thing. And when we know someone says, these are our core values, and you're sitting next to someone who doesn't exhibit any of those values, and they're allowed to remain and not live those values, I assure you, those are not your values. You're just letting everybody else know you're full of beans. And here's a great example. So what else are we full of beans on? I guess that it starts to open up Pandora's box to what else is up for interpretation. Verse back to the military. You don't go to the sergeant major and say, Sergeant Major, I don't like the way we do this. I think we should do it this way. Good luck to you in your, whatever happens after you were to do that. But that level of command and control is what makes us, the largest, most effective military in history. Is we're all following systems. Anyone doesn't follow systems, stand over there, get offline. We're over here doing stuff. That rookie stuff, we'll talk about that later. In the civilian business world, I find that 20-30% of the company does literally 80-90% of the work. And the other ones are just there getting in the way, in many cases, making it even more difficult for the people. So in my world, we say, what's your baseball card? And a baseball card to me is like back to salespeople. And oh, by the way, promoting the number one producing salesperson, the sales manager is easily like the number 1 to number 4 mistake in business. Like, oh boy. And everyone's heard that, yet they still do it. It's a popular mistake, right? Because the skill set to be the number 1 closer, that person's going to be more than likely 80% of the time a horrible sales manager. The person that makes a great sales manager is somebody who's probably in the 50th, 60th percentile. Paperwork's clean and the operations people love the salesperson. That's your sales manager. They know how to do it. And they have the patience and the kindness and the understanding to teach other people how to do it. The number 1 person is going to be so frustrated with new people, they're not going to want anything to do with it. So they're just going to grind through people. And if you survive 3 months, I'll speak to you. Like, think about all the pain and suffering for all the people in that. So again, risk of being repetitive, there should be an agreement of how we do things. We're professionals. Or if we can't say this is how we do it, there's your issue. Even if it's a bar napkin, a single checklist on one piece of paper, it doesn't have to be complex. It just has to be uniform, because our customers really deserve a high quality, consistent experience. Because if we don't give that to them more than once or twice, somebody else will. That's the competitive nature of business. So if your process isn't competitive, your accountability isn't competitive, if your hiring process and your onboarding process isn't competitive, your company can't really be competitive, because that's how we grow.
Again, all great points. And that thought of being professional, when, to use the most obvious analogy, which is sports, you look at professional athletes and their whole life is dedicated to that profession, right? They're practicing in the off season, they're staying healthy, they're eating right, they're sleeping, they're doing, at least most of them are, they're doing all the things that they need to do because they are professional at what they do. And a lot of times it's easier for people who aren't at that level, or maybe play with that type of scrutiny, or aren't on TV that much, however you want to say it. We look at it as a job. This is my job. And when you look at it as being professional, as opposed to having a job, that doesn't mean maybe what it used to a couple of years ago or a couple of decades ago, where you have to wear a suit and tie every day, and that's what makes you professional. Now, thankfully, that much has at least changed. I'm not a big fan of neckties, I'm not going to lie. But being professional, to your point, means what type of standards are we holding ourselves to? What's the extra effort that we're putting what's the extra effort that we're putting in for each other? How are we bringing the organization forward? All of those things. So those professional standards make a significant difference for sure. I'd like to circle back to that systems thinking. Makes sense to me, approaching things systematically. You mentioned breaking down an M16. Hopefully at this point, you don't have to break down an M16, because hopefully you never find yourself in a place where one of those is still in use. Things probably got really bad if we have to pick one of those up and clear it and keep going. But for everybody else who's listening, can you apply or give us an example potentially of taking a systems thinking approach to a more communication-based problem? We have to have a tough conversation. There's a communication challenge. How do we take a systems-based thinking approach to breaking that down and executing successfully?
Yeah, let's say we have a quarterly conversation, right? Annual performance reviews is too long. Don't even talk to me about a year ago. I'm a totally different human than I was a year ago, and that's a good thing, right? Digress, regress, level up, level down. That's the human experience, right? Everything that's happened up to this point makes us who we are, but we also have to be in line with where we need to improve. So back to my baseball card. The way baseball works, right? The pitchers have a bunch of numbers, and all the other position players in baseball all share the same numbers. And if you're batting 450, you're taking your G7 to the All-Star game yourself, private jet. If you're batting 350, right, you're playing in the majors, making a couple of $1 million a year. And if you're batting 250, you're in the minor leagues making $60,000 a year, sleeping 4 to a hotel room. And the difference between someone who makes $20 million a year versus $5 million a year and less than $100,000 a year is just hitting the ball 1 or 2 more times every 10 times. So hitting 450 in baseball means something, right? Hitting 250 means you're going to go to a lower league where you can hit 350, 450, and then get another shot at a more difficult thing. So if I have 5 project managers, I'll go right to the project manager leader and say, you got 5. Who's number 1? And they'll very quickly say, well, that's Mary or that's Jeff. And I'll say, well, why? And then they'll tell me why. And I'll say, okay, what's the gap analysis between number 1 and number 2? It's pretty tight. Okay, then analysis between 2 and 3, that's a little wider. Once we get out to that last one, they can't even see the other ones. Well, how long have they been here? Are they new? They here 90 days? No, they've been here 3 or 4 years. Okay, great. So your job is to curate a team of butt kickers and have them have fun kicking butt together as a team, and bonus them, and make their day exciting, and stretch them and teach them new things and continue to level up as an organization. When we have a third of the team that's just kind of languishing there, that's not motivating for the people that are in the middle deciding, do I want to be great or do I want to do the minimum necessary? So it goes right back to the standard. If you're not allowed to hit red on your scorecard for 3 weeks in a row without being on a PIP, then this is week 3, come in for the PIP. What do you mean I'm getting a PIP? Well, the policy is after 3 weeks of a red number, you get a PIP. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, you're on a PIP. Those are the rules for everybody. My office now. So now as a leader, I'm not going out of my way to hide behind your house and wait for you to speed, right? I'm literally just following the process. And if I don't follow the process, then I'm out of bounds and someone above me is going to notice me being out of bounds. So I really like you, Bob, but I like my employment here a bit more, and I've agreed to PIP you after your 3rd bad week, and here we are. You're the one that created the number. I really wish it was green, like I do, but you've put me in this situation. I'm going to do my job because I've agreed to do so, and it's my duty to have this conversation with you. So I really need you to get your numbers back on track, or we're going to miss you, Bob. Any questions? You mean I can't just fail like on my own for a year straight? No, you can't, because the process says this, and then you as an organization can soften that or harden that wherever you want to. It's a sliding scale. You decide what we're doing here, gums or sharp teeth. That's up to you. But whatever you set it at, that has to be the operating environment for everyone. Or as soon as realize people it isn't, it's back to whatever they want to do. So like, you're either making it up or we're following a system. And if you don't have a system, it's really not that big of a deal to create a version 1.0 basic expectations for the business. That's why systems thinking and adopting a system and buying in or leaving, I know that's oversimplistic, but it's not. Getting people to actually say, this person doesn't want to follow our process. They don't want to be nice to their teammates, and I'm getting customer complaints. Like, please explain to me, once I've heard those 3 things, why they should work here. Who manages them? How long has this been going on? How many other people are like this if this is how you manage this person? So I'm going to go to the root causation every time, because what I've learned in decades of doing this work is when someone said, here's my issue, like, that's not really your issue. Your issue is you haven't capitalized human resources enough, and you're trying to get a deal. You're fishing for the wrong fish in the wrong pond with the wrong lures. And then you're wondering why things aren't happening, versus meaning hiring poorly, not holding people accountable, not communicating, not swapping people out. You're paying for all of that in the lack of EBITDA, in the lack of engagement, in high turnover cost, in frustration, brain damage, whatever you want to call it. So like, it's like, well, we don't have the budget for that. I'm like, yes, you do. You're just putting a huge pile of money on the table and literally lighting it on fire and watching it burn, versus taking that same capital and just moving it up the chain and investing in this. So like, that's what I find is all of the issues are, you don't have access to good people, so you put up with the bad ones. Yeah, that's the truth. Well, let's get you some talent partners. Let's get you some personality assessments. Let's look at some data. Let's look at some hiring systems. And let's do that. Let's invest in that for a year or two, So we can have a wildly profitable company, and the ROI on those investments is 5x, 10x, 100x, versus when you don't do it, you just pay the toll, you just pay the price, and you get to live with the disappointment. So it's kind of like a double, triple whammy, and it doesn't really cost any more money. In fact, the sooner you do this, the cheaper it is. But getting people to see that they're squandering money on being unclear sometimes takes a little time for people to get it. So that's why, back to personal branding, I usually come by referral, or someone happens upon me like this. And usually it's one founder to the other. Like, yeah, this is going to seem pretty wild a few times during this, but it's absolutely the right thing to do. And it's the fastest way. It is the quickest difficult conversation you're going to have. And then we don't have to have those anymore, except by exception. So it's no longer the rule. It becomes the exception. And the exceptions are much easier to knock down as they pop up, because A, it's the expectation for you to have the conversation. And if you didn't, then you would be under the spotlight. So that's how we do it, is we go right back to Lencioni. Hey, before we hire you, we're really serious about hitting numbers. So if you're kind of like interested in hitting your numbers, don't accept this position, because there is real accountability here. Are you okay calling out the boss when you don't agree? Like, granted, somebody has to make the call. So I need you to, if the decision has been rendered, even if you don't agree with it, you'll have to decide how many times that happens in a year if this is still the right place for you. However, you'll always be heard here. We might not go with your idea, but we welcome the challenge, as long as we're assuming positive intent, which we always should with humans, and you are clearly looking out for the greater good, not your personal comfort. So, just some basic rules. Then we get into we're going to have some conflict, but that allows us to really commit. And then once we're super committed, like, you're going to hold yourself accountable. When people make an agreement to 10 units a week, they'll approach you and say, I can't do 10 units a week. You guys are nuts. I'm going to go somewhere else where 7 units is perfectly acceptable. Good luck. Thank you. They're never going to talk smack about that company. But if you never tell them it was 10 units and they're producing 5 or 6, and you just roll up on one day and let them go, they're going to say, wow, I thought I was doing great. No one told me 5 or 6 units wasn't awesome. I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing. So you can just see the failure in not making an agreement. They're just a blind expectation. So ask yourself, if you're listening to this, how many expectations do I have out there in the universe that haven't been turned into agreements? I would have you direct your energy there first and shore those up, and just watch how the 136 issues you're currently working on are actually symptoms of some of those very, very upstream big things not being fully agreed upon. So I'm a root causation coach. I like to solve everything at the root. I think back to school and the fire triangle, right? Heat, oxygen, and fuel. If you remove any one of those 3 things to the fire triangle, no fuego. Issues, problems in business, they all have oxygen, heat, and fuel sources. So you just need to know what those are so you can remove those. So just look at it from a very systematic way, with a little, universal elements involved, and you're all good. It's art. It's science. It's not 100% of either. Every company blends those 2 things together to get what feels right and fits for you.
Yeah. And to circle all the way back to a comment you made in the beginning of the conversations, expectations or resentment under construction, I think it was caught my attention as soon as you said it. I want to say it was a Gallup study. I could be wrong. It could be a decade old now. But somewhere along the lines of like the 12 most common causes for workplace conflict, and all 12 were different misaligned expectations. So it really could have been the one root cause, because they were all just 12 different expectations instead of breaking it doing that way. But making sure that the expectations are clear and consistent, everybody's living up to them. I'm also curious as to your thoughts, holding everybody to the same standard. I get it. No argument there. One of the issues that I do see fairly frequently is when organizations bring people on board, they say everybody's being held to the same standard. I told you what the standard is, it, go hit it. But now there's somewhere between perception and reality of lack of coaching, lack of support, lack of tools, lack of, and At any given time, that could be an excuse, that could be real. Let's just assume for the purpose of this conversation that it's sliding towards real, because there are times where that exists. Where do you sit and how do you help the folks that you work with to make sure that they're taking an active role in developing people and positioning them to be successful, as opposed to just saying, welcome to the organization, here are our commitments and core values, don't show me any red numbers for the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think you have to post the results in a public place. If people can fail in silence, they'll do it much easier than if it's a public failure. So healthy peer pressure. I'm a good teammate. I know you're a good teammate. We're good teammates together, versus that one right there, about half of their promises come true. That one right there, 9 or 10 out of 10 come true. So I think back to the agreed upon things, publicly posting your wins and not your failures is you're cherry picking the good and none of the bad. You're creating an unfair, unbalanced environment. So like if I have been working here 20 years and you were to just suddenly one day put production in the break room and there was 20 people and I was like 18, I would just see that. And first I'd be like, oh, this can't be right. Like I'm like really good at this. I've been doing this for like a lot longer than these new guys. I walk around here like I kind of own the place. But then when I actually look at their production is better than mine, I would have a moment to say, wow, how does this sit with me? This next week I'm going to go up 4 or 5 points. And in a month or two, I'm going to be in the top quartile, because that's not acceptable to me. I don't roll like that. If that wasn't a public thing, everyone just assumes I'm good at my work because I've been here forever. And that's not necessarily the case. Conversely, we could have some junior people or some very quiet, mild-mannered people quietly in the corner banging out some amazing numbers. But unless we put those numbers up there, they could be marginalized. They could be minimized. The mean girls and the mean boys from junior high school and that toxic clique that rolls around every company, if left unchecked, is going to talk down to them. Whereas if I was posting that unsung hero is the hero, because, hey, Buff and Biffy, you need to be more like Mark or Mary. That changes the dynamic to who's the cool kids at the office. The cool kids are the ones that move the needle for clients, for stakeholders, for each other as teammates. Ultimately for the mission that you're on. Those are the cool kids in my world. And oftentimes after a couple of years in an engagement, taking a culture that isn't great and turning it into these best place to work award winner, 90-some%, the cool kids are often different at the end of my engagement than they are at the beginning. So it just goes back to what's cool and what's not cool.
Yeah, it posting the scoreboard, it gets back to the great game of business, right? So everybody can see this is where we're going. This is our contribution. This is how we're heading towards it. Again, the power of standards, the power of systems, the power of consistency, it speaks for itself. I do feel like one of the great missed opportunities is getting leaders who actually coach and contribute. It's really easy to coach people out. It takes a little bit more commitment, takes a little bit more vision, takes a little bit more ability to coach people up before coaching them out. And so there's some place to be on that, right? You try to coach somebody up, they show that they're not willing to play ball, coach them out by all means. But at least having that coach up process in place, more times than not, we could play the hypothetical games for any end of the spectrum, but participating in the process to help make people feel like they can be successful and join them on that, as opposed to saying, well, this is what we do. You see the numbers in the break room, either hit the numbers or go work somewhere else. Honestly, at that point, they should go work somewhere else, because they're not getting that. It's not a two-way street at that point.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it goes back to like, how are we selecting? And our ability to select the right people severely limits the people that are going to fail. So I'm going to call out management and say, if you continue to recruit the wrong people, we will continue to have many public examples of failure. So back to root causation, let's just stop that. Let's look at the data. Let's make sure we have a killer onboarding process, a 90 days to success ramp. And I'm a big fan in the 80-day performance review. If on day 80, I don't wait to 90 because it could be too late. Most states will give you kind of a mulligan, probationary period, 90 days before all the unemployment insurance ratings and hard to get rid of people legislation comes into play. So whatever that is in your state, find out what's probationary. And on the 80th day, ask yourself, knowing what I now know with all the interview process, all those other candidates, the person we selected, and 80 days of actual results, am I pinching myself? High five. I can't believe we got them and they're going to stay. I think we're going to retain this one after 90 days. If you're not pinching yourself, lucky that you and grateful that you have this person on your team, let them go and go through the process until we can get through another quarter where that's not the case. And I know that doesn't sound popular or fun, but let's fail fast with the wrong people versus letting them get tenure and making it impossible to remove them in the future. So anytime maybe with an organization, it's like, ooh, yeah, we don't have any documentation. And here are the 47 reasons why I couldn't do the right thing for the rest of the team. I'm like, yeah, I just want you to remember this right now. This is BS. This is of your causing. There's a limit to how much I can help you with that level of thought. And it's okay to say we've made mistakes in the past and we're not going to do that moving forward. So the amount of problem you have is solved by the amount you're willing to invest to fix it. So if you want to be a great company, but you're not willing to invest being great, stop asking about greatness and just realize that you're interested in being great. You're not committed to being great. So like all this stuff is solvable, and it only takes a year or two to completely transform a business, or you can just do nothing. And whatever your problem is just gets systematically deeper and worse and harder to fix. So like, this is not like something that gets better with time. It gets better with a conversation and a commitment to do something different, and then active coaching. So I'm all about coaching people up if they're the right people and they have the aptitude and they have the ability to gain the capacity. So like if someone is close and they're new, yeah, let's love on them. And I also want to watch them trend to be the right person in the right seat. But if they're not the right person, it doesn't matter. So like if they're in it to win it, they're just maybe a little slow. Their learning style is different, but they're making progress and it's a little slower, but it's steady and they have everything else. Yeah, I'm going to give those people some more space. I'm not going to people aren't disposable. But if this person doesn't want to be great, they're not willing to follow the process or use the tools we pay for them, and they've decided to do it elsewhere, I'm sorry. There's nothing else I can do here. I'm not going to rewire how the company does it to accommodate one strong-willed individual. I'm simply just going to go ask the 7 billion people on the planet, does anybody else want to do this for 120 grand a year? If the answer is yes, you can apply, and we'll go through a professional recruiting process to stack rank and hopefully offer and retain the number one candidate.
Yeah, so if some people just don't demonstrate the willingness or the ability, then go ahead and move on for sure. And your point about hiring the right people to begin with, and let's be honest, a lot of hiring managers have many other things to do, and they probably overvalue their interviewing skills and don't have as much time to do it because they're doing so many other things. It's a part-time role amongst many other things they're responsible for. So if we invest the time up front, we save the time down the road. All great points. And perhaps the biggest issue I've seen in those scenarios is when the hiring manager attaches their self-image to the hire. So it's clear to everybody else that this person isn't working, but for the hiring manager to let them go, they've got to admit that they made a mistake and they're not willing to do that. So they justify, compensate, shift roles and responsibilities, move the goalposts.
Yeah, that is like the most dangerous employee at your company. Somebody who does that literally is about the worst thing When you think you're strong and you're actually weak and you're moving things around, it's like a 3-card Monte game. So like the complexity of that, my call out, if that was my client behavior, I'd say, let's look at your core values real quick. Which core values are being violated by the act and by your tolerance of the act? So who's getting why don't you make your core values, we're slightly interested in being somewhat above average when it feels right. Let's just throw that right onto your excellence core value as the actual explainer. No, I don't think we'd want to do that. I wouldn't want a customer to see that, and that doesn't sound great. Well, great. I need you to raise your activity, your management up to what the core values actually are, or I need to lower the core values to an area you're willing to do. So like a hiring manager with that ego that is so big, when someone can't admit they made a mistake and they're willing to do another thing and another thing to hide that, that is a terrorist. I'm sorry. That's not an activist. That is not someone that's here to build your organization. This is someone here just to get money to do what they want to do, and you're being used as an implement to get what they want. And if that level of thinking is anywhere in the human resources department, ouch. I'm going to have a conversation with the CEO about that. And we're probably going to get a new chief people officer and a whole new bunch of people who think of it the way we want to think about it. And that's how I would solve that problem.
One way to do it for sure. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I know you've got limited time today, and I really appreciate you joining us. You have at least 3 different businesses that you do and ways that you offer to help and connect with people. So please let us know, where can we go to stay connected, follow, and continue to learn from you?
Yeah, Michael, LinkedIn. Love for your listeners to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can DM me there if you'd like to have a conversation. The Go Expand app is at goexpand.com. EOS Worldwide is where you'd find my EOS coaching. And then the Business Sergeant is bizsgt.com. All call for all veterans. I have a free training academy and a community for all U.S. veterans, no matter where you're from, when you were in. And the goal there is to continue to love on our vets and give them any civilian skills they need to transition or really fully realize and leverage their military experience into a super cool civilian position by companies that really appreciate the intangibles that veterans bring. Like what I always say, if I have my partner in this is a special forces legend, and special operators are 3% of the military. Military is 7% of the population. So like when you take a top 1% person, I can put a Green Beret in anyone's company and they can figure almost anything out. Like brain surgery, nuclear physics, there's a few things that's not going to fly on, but anywhere there's people, an amazing leader. Stop hiring for the resume. Back to your point, the sales manager who is a great salesperson. Yep, this looks like the next logical position for you. Yeah, well, where did you get your leaders? We're not going to give you any leadership training. We're just going to you're going to pick that up through osmosis as you go into a position that is not anything like the position you excelled at to achieve this one. So we got to start either providing top level leadership and management training at your business as part of the onboarding process for those people, get outside folks to come in and bring it to you, or just find people that eat, breathe, and sleep discipline, accountability, mission execution, and low drama, high output, and that would be veterans. So that's my compassionate plea. Hire a vet. They'll show you how to hold people accountable because they've had plenty of great examples for them.
And thank you for all the things that you do and for sharing your time today, but especially for taking care of the vet community. Like I said earlier, I didn't serve, my father did, but that's a community that has done so much for us, and they certainly have their own challenges and things to work through as part of that transition back into civilian society. So thank you so very much for that. I'll put all of those links in the show notes. People do not have to go looking for them. They will be right here. So that way they'll have them one click away. I really can't thank you enough for sharing your time today, Chris. It's been a pleasure to meet you and to learn from you in this conversation. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Chris, thank you for a great conversation. I truly appreciate all that you shared. The point that you made about how it's imperative for leaders to care for their followers is spot on. We can't hear it enough. The importance of assuming positive intent in so many of our interactions could solve so many problems that we run into and really help with some of these misjudgments and missed expectations. And I really like the line that you used. Are we interested in being great or committed to being great? Because those are two different things that produce two different results and take us two different places. Thank you so much for all that you shared today. And of course, thank you to everybody that joined us today. I really appreciate you being here for another show. Again, please, while you're here, just take a second, like the show, subscribe to it, share it with your network, and we would love more feedback from you. Please reach out, let us know what you think, what you'd like to see or hear more of. And while you're online today, take just a quick second to visit our sponsors. You get over to humantel.com, enter the code INQUASIVE25, and get 25% off the science-backed, best-in-class training module of your choice as you begin to develop the skill set necessary to recognize when people's emotions are changing by identifying shifts in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. Everything you need to brush up on before you start is there at humantel.com. For the professional interviewers, please head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you can get all your questions answered about both the International Association of Interviewers and the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. Everything you need to know to qualify, to participate, to earn the designation and more, it's there, certifiedinterviewer.com. And finally, before you log off today, we'd appreciate it if you checked out inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and more to help them uncover hidden value in all of their high impact conversations. Thank you for being here another week, another episode. We really appreciate it. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.